Welcome to everybody who's joined us this evening. We have our strength and conditioning guy, Brian Kent, on. One of the big reasons we asked Brian to come on this evening is one, he's a very interesting guy. He's a very friendly guy. And I know a lot of our younger guy, I think the 2007s and upwards from last year managed to work with Brian. And I know a couple of others came in. I know Zibby's group, the 2008s, were very much looking forward to working with this year, Brian, before everything happened. So we're looking forward to get it on. So yes, Riley, it is the strength and conditioning guy you met last year. Okay. Here we go. All right. So, Brian, if you just want to start by introducing yourself a little bit for us, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, thank you, everybody, for being available on a Monday night. I know there wasn't a lot going on otherwise, but I do appreciate everybody showing their faces tonight. Thank you for making me a part of your evening. But like Matt said, I have worked with Lions Township Soccer Club the last couple winters doing some strength and conditioning work. So my background is I'm an adult grown man, which I guess that's debatable. My license says I am an adult grown man, but my close friends could argue otherwise. But I'm a trainer and a strength coach. But before that, as a kid, I was an athlete. I played football and baseball as a high school player. I played 1 year of college football at the University of Iowa. I played 2 years of college baseball at the University of Nebraska. I played 3 years of minor league baseball, finishing my career with the Chicago White Sox. So one of the reasons for this call is my book just came out back in December called Walked On, Life Lessons from a Two-Sport Non-Scholarship College Athlete, that I was trying to write for the last couple of years, and it took more time because I'm not a real writer, I'm a trainer, so I'd spend my day with clients and with teams. Didn't really have a specific time to write. So one of the goals of getting the book out was to help kids of various levels stay committed to their goals, even when times get hard, because the higher you play, the harder it will get. So I'm grateful for Matt and the crew to have me back on here and share my story with you guys.
I actually didn't realize, Brian, that you went to school in Downers Grove, just down the road.
Downer South, man. Downer South is huge in my family. I lived right across the street, basically on 66th Street. My dad was a high school, he taught calculus at South, as well as coaching football, wrestling, and baseball. Both my sisters went to South, so I have a lot of South pride. And even though my dad currently coaches football at Downers Grove North, which is crazy because one of his former players took over the head job and brought him on, but South is very, very special to me, and as an ethnocentric person, it's really where the story began, which is why the first chapter of the book is called South.
We actually have a good number of players from North and South and some of the older teams, so that I know they're going to be interested in some of the stuff in your book. So I think I sent you a bunch of questions earlier. I think my first question, and this is going to be for some of our older ones to start with, but I know there's a lot of players on there who are going to be asking this. What was it like having to speak to two coaches from the same school? Now, we've had some players that have talked to multiple coaches from different schools, but what was it like talking to two from the same school?
So I was lucky so I had a real hard time deciding which sport I wanted to play in college, whether it was football or baseball or both. And I had assumed that I would get a scholarship for football or baseball, and that would help make my decision pretty easy. But when I was coming out of South in the class of 1997, which I know if you do the math on that, you'll figure out how old I am, the University of Iowa was recruiting me for both football and baseball. So as a football player, I was probably a little bit small and a little bit slow, but as a baseball player, I was probably a little big and a little fast. So I was kind of in two different worlds with my football body and my baseball body. But the University of Iowa had recruited me for football and baseball, and invited me as a football player to be a preferred walk-on, which means they weren't going to give me a scholarship, but they were also going to give me a roster spot on the team. So by being able to keep that preferred walk-on spot, and not every school doesn't have a lot of preferred walk-ons. So basically, Iowa was telling me as an 18-year-old kid that you could play football for us, just not with a scholarship. But at the same time, the Iowa baseball program was recruiting me with the idea that I would be a finalist for a baseball catching scholarship. So I was very fortunate that the University of Iowa was on board with me playing both sports. And it was as it was explained to me, if I got a baseball scholarship and not a football scholarship, I would be allowed to play football and baseball my first year. And if baseball was paid for my school and football was not, then I would be expected to shift over to baseball full time. But the difference is football in college gives full scholarships, where baseball only gives partial scholarships. So it appeared that I was going to be a scholarship catcher and a walk-on fullback back in 1997.
Okay, so with that in mind, how many colleges do you end up attending?
Well, my transcript, I think, shows 4, because I took some summer school at College of DuPage to clean up some chemistry classes that weren't the best for me at the time. But I ended up going to the University of Iowa out of high school. I had mono as a football player, which pretty much ended my football career. I was super small, and the new baseball coach wouldn't let me play baseball because I was on the football team. So I ended up having to transfer to the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, where I was there for about 2 years. I had some major problems with my head baseball coach, and I ended up leaving there to go to Omaha, which was a Division II school. Then it's a Division I school now, just up the road in Nebraska. So I played at 3 different schools in various stages and various increments.
So you traveled around a bit. So you said Omaha, Lincoln, and Iowa.
Yeah,
so it's a lot.
I'm pretty familiar with Interstate 80. You know, how about the Stevenson?
Yeah, having
80 West,
read your book
Iowa
again.
City.
Having read your book again, it seems like, especially even as you got into playing baseball, as you were a little older, you did a lot of traveling to kind of achieve and try and achieve what you wanted to do, which I know some of our players are always interested in trying to achieve certain goals. And I think for them to understand that the work that was required to achieve that is going to be very, very interesting. Now, it definitely goes into what I wanted to talk about you next. And on my front page here, I'm looking at everybody on here, and I see 3 or 4 players on here that play soccer and work out pretty much consistently every single day. And I know, having read your book and having talked with you, over the last couple of years, can you kind of give us an understanding of what overtraining means and some nutritional tips? Because I would say a lot of the players that I know and some of the coaches possibly don't eat as well and do the other things around it as well as they should. Can you give us some advice and some thoughts on that?
Absolutely. There's a very old baseball saying that says, you can't make the club if you're in the tub. So if you're hurt, it's hard to play. And as a football, baseball player, my dad was my coach from Little League and Pee Wee football all the way through high school. And we had a pretty good weight program in high school for that time, but we definitely talked about working hard. We didn't really talk about taking days off, and we didn't really talk about the importance of recovery and rest and how much that impacts the body as well as performance. And when you're a kid, it's different because kids can play all day long, but there also needs to be a balance between the amount of work that you're putting into it and the amount of sleep that you get at night or the amount of food that you eat. Because if you think about if you're playing a soccer tournament or if I have a baseball doubleheader and I'm catching 2 games in a row, I'm going to need to eat after that because I'm expending a lot of energy. And if you guys are running around in practice or at a game or at a tournament, it is important to eat good food that promotes performance. So me eating hot dogs and fries from Teddy's Red Hots on 63rd Street in between games of a doubleheader, and my stomach hurts and I'm feeling a little sluggish, a little slow. I mean, yes, you could argue that kids can pretty much eat anything and play fine, but there's definitely foods that are better choices and foods that are not. So the nutrition part of it was something that I learned mean, for me as a kid, I ate Pop-Tarts for breakfast with some cereal and orange juice, which has very little nutritional value. And as a two-sport athlete with Division I aspirations, it probably wasn't enough food for my body trying to gain weight and burning calories at a very high rate. So for you guys as soccer players, which is it's much more of an endurance sport than baseball. I mean, as a catcher, I pretty much sit back there in a crouch. I don't really move a ton. You guys are running how many miles a game, roughly, Matt?
It will range from our athletes probably between 3 to 5 a game, and then as they get older, anywhere up to 8 or 9 to 11, 12. Like when they're playing in college, it'll be around 11 to 12.
That's crazy. I haven't run 12 miles in a week in my life. So I the nutrition part of it is super important, but that's something that is usually hard to understand as a kid because you can pretty much eat anything and roll through it. As you get older, you start to understand how certain foods affect your body, and having some good whole grains, whether it be some oatmeal or multi-grain bread, or maybe you are having some eggs so you have some protein to help your body feel full. Like these are all things that are individually appropriate because what works for me might not work for Matt, might not work for everybody else. So everyone has to sort of do trial and error. But I will say when the majority of the food coming into your body is used as fuel, it definitely has an impact on your performance and how well you feel. I mean, if I eat some ice cream right now, you'll see me running as fast as I can to the bathroom because it just tears up my stomach, and it definitely has an adverse effect on me. But that's something that you guys will understand more so as you play with different types of breakfast or what to eat between games, or even on a road trip. So you're not eating a bunch of baseball trips. We would go to a buffet and there'd be macaroni and cheese and Jello and like chicken fried steak, which I never even heard of before until I got to college, which are all food that's not like the healthiest for you. So generally keeping your emphasis on good, healthy, clean food, the sooner you start, the better it works for you. But as Matt said about even days off, my college football career ended because of mononucleosis. That summer before I left for Iowa City, I was playing summer baseball on a team of college players where I was the only guy not in college. I was training for Iowa football. In addition to following the strength plan, I'm pushing our family car across the parking lot itself. I'm running stadium steps. I'm running hills. And I'm also taking a chemistry class. I'm not sleeping that much. So I really put myself in a hole because getting to Iowa City with mono and weighing 183 pounds as a Big Ten fullback, I needed to weigh probably close to 230. So I'm about 50 pounds away from where I needed to be, which basically came from me pushing it, and not really letting it my body heal. So I had a client that likes to say there's a time to charge, there's also a time to recharge. I didn't learn my lesson because my college baseball career essentially ended due to the shoulder surgery I had from playing a lot of summer games and catching doubleheaders and being on the field all the time, where I didn't feel like I could take a break, but my shoulder probably needed a break. So both of my college sports ended due to overuse, football from mononucleosis and baseball from shoulder surgery. So as Matt's describing here, it is super important to understand the balance between work and recovery and eating good food, because you feel better when you eat good food, especially, we talk about immune system with this pandemic. The stronger your immune system, the healthier you are, the less likely we are to get sick. So that all starts with what we put in our mouth.
Right. No, I for sure. It's definitely something that I have been more involved in the last few years, being able to eat cleaner and a little bit healthier, because it's helped me to feel a little bit better, to be honest with you. And I think for some of us, and I was chatting with one of my players the other night who plays at quite a high level, and she was like, oh yeah, I had to run, I had training here, and then I ran to McDonald's and got a cheeseburger, and then I came and did this. It's like, yeah, it's probably not the best for you. So we had a little chat about that. But all right, so what is the best advice you've ever given to someone or have ever received from somebody?
So in the book, I mentioned that even though I played two sports, I really didn't get a lot of individual awards in high school. Mm-hmm. At South, our teams were very good, but it was never really I didn't feel like I was ever the star on any team, even in Little League or Pee Wee football or YMCA basketball. I played 1 year of soccer when I was 8. And I didn't like it because there was too much running, and my mom would overdress me. So as a goalie, I had too many clothes on. I'm sweaty, and it wasn't for me. But I never felt like I was the star. at any show, at any level, start the show at any level. So I was all conference for football and baseball in high school. I was all area football and baseball in high school, and I played in an all-star football game, but I was not all state and I was not an all-American. I didn't get a scholarship. I didn't get drafted for baseball either. So this is in the book as well. My dad being my coach, I thought there was a chance after my junior year of high school football that I could be voted all conference. And I didn't. It didn't happen. I was having breakfast in the kitchen. I was looking at the Chicago Tribune newspaper, which some of you kids have to Google what a newspaper is because you probably haven't seen them before. And all the all conference, all state names that weren't mine, and it was bugging me. It was aggravating me because I felt like I was a good player. I felt like I needed to be recognized, and I wasn't. And my dad could probably tell that I was upset a little bit, and he said, "Are you upset that you're not all conference?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you think you're one of the best players?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you really need a piece of paper to tell you that you're the best?" And I said, "No." So some of the best advice I received was those titles, those all conference, those all state, those plaques, like they're cool to have, but it doesn't change if you don't get them. So my whole life, I had to grind and fight and hustle hard for reps because sometimes you'll get to a high level, or maybe you have a high school varsity or college or beyond, where you see guys that all had those accolades, and when they start to struggle, it breaks them down because they've never struggled before. They're not used to any kind of adversity or any kind of failure. You know, if you're playing in college, there's a good chance everybody on your team was the best player in their town, or the best player on their club team, or the best player in their high school. So they're used to success, and they're used to being dominant all the way up the chain. Now they get to a college team where every one of the players on that team is the best player in their town. And just by nature of the sport, you're going to struggle a little bit. It's not going to be as easy as it used to be. So having that inner strength to practice and to train and to be understanding that adversity is part of the game, and you need to carry yourself like a champion through good days and bad, is just part of the process of playing at a high level. So the best advice I got from my dad was that you don't really need a piece of paper to tell you that you are good. Like, you should believe in yourself, regardless if you have the Chicago Tribune or the Chicago Sun-Times putting you on the all-state team. So that was something that I carried with me the whole way through, especially because when I got to Iowa City as a football player, you had these kids from Iowa that were from these small towns that had like 15 high school varsity letters. I'm like, what? 15? I have 5. How do you have triple the letters that I have? But then you realize that, there's only 20 guys in the school. So the varsity, football, soccer, basketball team is being played by the same 4 guys, right? So sometimes your level of competition you get in Chicago is greater than what other people are used to. And so those kids that had all the accolades in a small town, in a small school, they don't matter the higher you go. So I really do feel like it is important in our minds that we carry ourselves with a high level of respect and dignity, because just because we didn't make the all-state team doesn't mean we aren't good. And that's something that I've tried to keep close to my heart during this whole process of being a football and a baseball player.
So there was, I read your book in December when I got it, and I kind of reread it again this week just in prep for chatting with you, because there were a couple of bits that I got in there. And I enjoyed the first 180 so pages because it was really interesting to kind of find out a bit more about you, what you've done, how you prep, thoughts on, especially doing kind of the multiple sports that you did. The last 20 pages or so were, for me, the best 20, because it inspired me to think a little bit more about what I do as a coach, how I view certain things within the environment. And you had some top tips in there. You had some top tips for coaches, top tips for just in general, and you had 3 top tips for athletes. So could you give our group watching your 3 top tips for athletes, please?
Definitely. So I believe one of them is to be coachable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times is young athletes. And when I say young, I wrote this book with the goal of having sort of a high school athlete be the primary reader.
Mm-hmm.
There are some bad words in there, so I apologize with for anybody that's not in high school and reading some curse words. I'm trying to censor myself better. But sometimes I came from a lot of great coaches. My Little League coaches were good. My Pee Wee football coaches were good. My high school coaches were great. And even at Downer South, with that era, we had 5 varsity football coaches that are all in the Illinois High School Football Coaches Hall of Fame. So my baseball coach in high school also is in the Hall of Fame. You know, my dad being one of those coaches in the Hall of Fame. So I was very lucky to have come from pretty good coaching. At the high school level, it probably doesn't get much better across the board than what I was lucky to experience and fortunate to have experienced at South. So I feel like I was always around coaches that were coaching. They weren't lazy. We had specific game plans. We had coaches that wanted us to do well. They wanted to do well. And even, living with my dad, who I could see what the commitment looked like on his end, especially from a football standpoint, where, we'd go to practice after school, we'd come home, at dinner, and he would grade math papers until 8, 9 o'clock at night. And he would, be in bed by 10, up at 4 or 5 the next day, back to school. I understand that the coaches that put their heart and soul into these programs don't get enough credit because their care can help shape their players. So I was lucky as a high school kid to have had great coaches. But what I hadn't had happen to me before until I got to college was having coaches scream at me for what I would say no particular reason. I had not been built that way. Yeah, my dad yelled at me a couple times in high school for things that were probably my fault, but I'd never really been assessed in a way where I'd never been talked down to. I never had been really broken down from a coach. I grew up respecting all of my coaches, and if they told me to run through a wall, I'm going to run through that wall. But then I get to college, and it's a little bit of a different experience. So being coachable is important because the higher you go, the coaches are essentially the ones that make the decisions on who's playing or whether you're on or off the team. So it helps to have coaches that can assess what you're good at, so your strengths get stronger, but also the parts of your game that are weak, or I should not weak, but maybe weaker, that you can strengthen those too. And I think if it is important for you to be a good player, if it's important for you to progress and to keep evolving, then some of your focus points on your own time should be strengthening some of those parts of your game that you're not good at. So everyone likes to play with their strengths because it's fun, right? I mean, if you're the goalie and you can stop everything, well, that's maybe you're great movement to your left, but maybe you're not great movement to your right. And knowing from a coach what you can improve with is super important, because then you can take that practice time and turn a weakness into a strength. So that's part of being coachable, and realizing that you don't know everything and you're not the best at everything. And there's probably little minutia of your game that could always get a little bit better, whether it's footwork or better body control, or maybe it's skill with the ball, or maybe it's paying attention without the ball. These are all things that are part of the game, that the higher you go, every element is being watched and being graded and being talked about, and having good coaches from good programs sort of prepare you for that is something, both sides of it, the good and the bad. I had never really experienced the bad until I got to college, but understanding that parts of your game will continue to be analyzed, and it's good to have a trusting person to teach you what to work on.
I like that one.
Right?
That was one. You kind of covered two, because your top 3 were the be committed part of it.
Committed, yeah.
The handling criticism well, and the honest talent assessment. That was you kind of summed all that up in the one. So if you're looking for those 3 top tips, is have an honest talent assessment, so understand where you're at, being committed, and understanding what committed means. Because I don't know about you, Brian, but I think sometimes people take that word committed and they they look at it in a very singular fashion, whereas commitment doesn't just mean being on time to practice, right? It talks about everything else we've talked about tonight, the nutrition side of it, the sleep side of it, the working on your own side of it, and the handling criticism well. Actually, that last bit actually leads into one of my last questions for you, and then we can kind of free a little bit. But when coaches or when you get criticized, it's not nice. No one likes to be criticized, right? I know I definitely don't, and I found it harder to deal with growing up a little bit. I'd throw it off in the moment, and then I would go away and I would sit and I would really think about it and worry about it all the time. And one of the things that you had in the book was about healing mentally, and how when you left one of your programs, you were glad that Instagram wasn't around. Can you kind of elaborate on that for us, and the reasons why, and just especially in this time, the healing mentally and the mental aspect of that?
Absolutely. So when I was at the University of Nebraska, we had a new coach, and he was, as he told me and my dad in a meeting, he was looking for athletes, not just baseball players. So even though he had never seen me play prior to my arrival in Lincoln, Nebraska, he knew that I had played college football and that I had good high school baseball credentials. And he was very good at getting the team to win. So I had visualized myself being a part of this winning program for the rest of my college years after my first year was in Iowa City. But the reality was, he, for some reason, didn't like me, didn't care for me, didn't know me. And after some, I would call them, I say, handled criticism well, he said things to me that were very personal and very, I would say, wrong. And he essentially tried to get me to quit the team, which I don't like to use the word quit. I think of myself as a very team-oriented person. And if I'm on a team, like, I'm all in. It's my commitment level. We talk about commitment and what that means, but to me, it means I'm all in. Like, I'm in for myself, I'm in for my teammates. I'll do whatever it takes for us to win a game, whether that's, pick up a teammate when they need it, or jump someone's ass if they need that too. So, as well as myself, Michael Jordan said in The Last Dance, which I hope you guys watch that. He said, "I never asked anyone to do something that I wouldn't do myself," which I felt was a quintessential look at one of the best competitors of all time. And he was trying to bring everybody up to his level. So when I ended up having to leave Nebraska right before my teammates, who were my best friends in the world, got hot. And my freshman year, we made the NCAA tournament. We lost to Mississippi State. Second year, which would have been, I left right before we got that year started, we ended up making the Super Regional, losing to Stanford. And the next 2 years, we were in the College World Series. And I say we like I was there, but I wasn't. I left right before that second Super Regional season. So I transferred to Omaha, which is Division II. I ended up hurting my arm, having surgery, and I couldn't play. So I'm sitting at home with my arm in a sling, watching my best buddies competing on ESPN in the College World Series. Now, I'll tell you, the College World Series is hosted in Omaha, Nebraska, 45 minutes from Lincoln, Nebraska, where the University of Nebraska campus is. So you can imagine, in a state like Nebraska, where there's no pro sports teams, how much they love their Huskers, and whether their Huskers have a football game or a thumb wrestling match, they're going to sell it out. So watching my friends on TV at the height of their college careers, while I'm sitting at home, not on the team, hurt, not like I had no real path that time, the word depression is intense. I don't know if I would use that for me specifically, but it was a tough place for me mentally. And I said in the book, if there had been Instagram in 2000, 2001, 2002, and I would check my buddies and I can see them, winning the regional, winning the super regional, making it to the College World Series, and me not being there, I could see myself as a younger person missing out on what I thought was my path too. So fortunately, we didn't have social media then. I didn't have a cell phone then. It's hard to imagine that now. but I could go home and isolate myself from all of that and process it better. Now with kids and phones and apps and social media, everything is in your hand to obsess over all night long. So I learned that I had to create some boundaries with myself, because even the Omaha World Herald newspaper or the Lincoln Journal Star during that time, all they wanted to talk about was Nebraska baseball. And I would see my coach, who hated me, plastered all over the news. I couldn't escape it. It was hard for me as a 21-year-old to see my friends doing well while I was doing nothing. And I was very lucky that Instagram wasn't around, because I may have gone into a depression that I couldn't stop, because I cared so much about it that it was crushing to not be with them.
I think when we were growing up, we had a very different way of receiving information and validate. Kind of going back to your point earlier about not needing a piece of paper to know you're the best. When I was growing up, even at U9, U10, U11 level, our local paper was filled with reviews every weekend, and they would come out in the Monday paper, or in the Tuesday morning paper, I should say. So if I'd had a bad game at the weekend, and even if I was 9 years old, I would go into school and the paper would be there, and everybody would have the paper out to see what had gone on. And there were days when I didn't want to go into school because I knew I'd had a bad game and it was going to be written about. But then there were games where I'd go in feeling kind of 10 feet tall, because I know I'd scored a goal, I'd made a good play, and I'd be able to go in and really feel good about it. Now, I don't know how I would have dealt with that, having to see that day in, day out growing up on social media. I think social media can be a very good thing. I also think it can be a very powerful thing in the wrong direction as well. So, and this is the one big thing that I have said to all the older groups, is that be very, very careful what you put on social media, because now, different to when myself and Brian were growing up, everything that goes online stays online. So if you say one bad comment about someone or a school, your future college coaches might be able to go and see that. So be very careful about what you post online, because it stays. And I think going to the healing and mentally healing part of it, that would have been a very big thing for me when I was younger, because I had a little bit of a temper when I was younger, and I used to be very rash. So I think that's a good lesson to learn there. Last one then, Brian, because I'm a little anxious of time. I want to get everybody out quite quickly. But if you could suggest maybe 3 or 4 activities for all of our players that they can maybe do at home, or once this crazy snow's gone, when they get back outside, just to keep themselves a little bit engaged, because we've managed to get back and practice the past 3 or 4 weeks, but before that we were away for a long time. So what would be the 3 or 4 key activities to help people not really get back in shape, but maybe to help them stabilize their core a little bit, or to do something along those lines?
Yeah, I love soccer for kids because you're always on the move. Baseball is kind of boring unless you're the catcher or the pitcher. The ball's in your hands. Like, you could stand outside in right field and for 2 hours and see a ball come your way, stand in the same place staring at your shoes. What I love about soccer for you guys is that you're always on the move. So not only from a health standpoint, your brain has to be active too. So as Matt's describing, a couple of things that would help. Really, a lot of people don't understand how to breathe properly. Even the simple act of breathing, the sooner that you have a chance to do it well, the better time you'll be able to perform. So your body can't tell the difference between stress, whether you're being chased by a dinosaur, or you have a math test, or you're playing in a gold medal version of a tournament. But all it does know is how well you can handle that stress. And I'm the older brother in my family. I got 2 younger sisters, and I would love to, this is going to sound mean, but no judgments. I would love to, while they're taking a shower, sneak in there and dump cold water on them, you'd hear, ah, right? They would be frozen, and they could have taught they couldn't breathe. It's like, ha, 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 ha. Your body, is it mean? Yes, I know that now as an adult, but it seemed like a funny thing to do when I was a kid. The point of it is, they're frozen in place and they can't breathe, right? Which could happen to you on a penalty kick. It could happen to you at the free throw line. It could happen to you on an ACT test. And so we can learn how to breathe properly, which usually is a nasal inhalation followed by, so think about this. If you're trying to sleep at night, the best way to get into a fatigue state is through diaphragmatic breathing, which could be easily described as a 4-second inhale through your nose, a 2-second hold, and a 6-second exhale through your mouth. So even that simple act of diaphragmatic breathing triggers the body's parasympathetic state, which is a fancy way your body's saying, okay, I'm going to unwind, I'm going to relax now. There's no dinosaurs chasing me. I'm not at a concert with a speaker by my face. Like, I'm going to relax and chill now. So at the very minimum, getting into that same breath on the field, or even if you're in the middle of a long run and you're trying to exhale through your mouth repeatedly, that's what leads to hyperventilation. So that nasal inhale, when the exhalation is longer than inhalation, it makes your body recover faster or get into a sleep mode faster. So if you haven't been playing as much, you're stuck at home, you're ready to rip your hair out because you want to go out and do something, and all of a sudden you start running at full speed, you're like, whoo, this cold February air is killing me. Well, if we can breathe through our nose a little better and exhale through our mouth, we'll be able to recover after those sprints or in the game a little bit more efficiently than we would if we weren't thinking about it. So this can be applied to being in bed at night when you're sleeping, or even how you recover on the field. So I would say simply breathing better is what's one way to do it. Yes, it's hard. There's a mask on your face, but if you can come back to your breath, it helps with performance on the field, in the classroom, and even trying to sleep well at night. So another one is communication. Right now, all you guys are looking at me, and I appreciate that, but sports is only one of the few places where you can't text your teammates. You can't be like, hey, Madeline, I'm going to kick it to you. Hey, Kayla, I'm going to pass to you. You have to actually talk to them. So being able to effectively communicate with words is a skill that's lacking in the world these days. Everybody's here, we're texting, we're Instagramming, we're emailing, no one's talking to each other. So even now in the year 2021, the importance of communicating on the field is at its highest level of history, because simply nobody is talking to each other like they used to. And so while it sounds simple, while breathing is simple, I would encourage you guys to talk to your teammates. And we've done this the last couple of years with Ltsc, where we'll start off with a joke. Someone's got to say something in front of the group, because should you be on the women's national team and you win a gold medal in the World Cup, and they say, hey, Avery, congratulations, you won the gold medal. How do you feel? You can't be like, you have to say something. So having that good communication as a teammate starts now. It will carry with you the whole time. All right, so I know that's not quite exactly what Matt's asking for, but being able to breathe better, being able to communicate well on the field will serve you well in your life on the field as well as off the court and off the field as well. But what I could really stress the most, what Matt's asking about from a performance standpoint, is the idea of using your whole body together. And I see kids of various sports, soccer, volleyball, wrestlers, baseball players. When we run, we want our arms to be doing just as much work as our legs. And I think about it from a basic math standpoint. If Matt and I are racing, he's probably faster than me, and he's running with his arms and legs. I'm just running with my legs. It's his 4 limbs versus my 2. I'm not a math major, but 4 is always greater than 2. So if we can move our body efficiently by having better coordination and using our limbs together, that is a simple way of keeping our body performing at a high level with skills that we already have. But there's no special secret sauce to this, but the better our body moves in space, the more coordination we have as human beings, as athletes, as soccer players, and as competitors, the easier the game gets. You know, the volleyball program that I work with, Chicago Elite, the first time those 14-year-old kids came down the stairs, it looked like a bunch of baby deer walking on a treadmill sideways. Like they had no idea what their limbs were doing. And so one of our focuses is just improving people's coordination, teaching them how to use their body as a weapon, as opposed to 4 individual limbs that are doing different things. So as Matt's asking, like, what's something to work on when you're running, ask yourself, am my arms involved? Am I able to get good thumb to nose, action? Am my arms staying at a right angle, or am I hammering nails with straight arms? So even just that efficiency of movement will go a long way toward making you better athletes. And you won't be as tired also because your body doesn't have to work as hard to get from A to B. So the breathing is essential, the communication is essential, and the full body coordination is equally essential from more of a performance standpoint.
I think, we plan on doing a few of these meet series, and I think when it comes back to the communication side of it, we had Aaron Wright from the Red Stars on a couple of weeks ago. And I think the one thing that everybody is going to see with these things moving forward is the way that we communicate. You listen to Aaron talk, we listen to you talk. I think the confidence and being able to project our thoughts and feelings is huge. And, you hear coaches in soccer say all the times that you guys have got to talk more, you've got to communicate more, give some information. Even if you're a quiet person, giving a specific piece of information and being specific can really, really help. Same way as, if I am going to give a piece of information to, let's say I'm giving a piece of information to Riley, because we talked about Riley earlier on this session. I'm just going to go, oh, Riley, just do this better. Because that means nothing. It's, hey, can you do it in this way or at this speed, or use a part of your body to do this? So the more information you can give, you don't have to say a lot, but the more information, the better your communication. And that about wraps it up. Brian, thank you so much for joining us tonight, man. I really, really appreciated it. And like I said, we're looking forward to getting you back out with us as soon as we can, and looking to get some players back and see you. And what we're going to do is we're going to send out all the information about your book to everybody. I'm going to I've made some little notes tonight. I'm going to pop those down into an email. And then I know that we'll give you a couple more minutes just to chat, because part of your book, you're donating proceeds to an organization, correct?
Yes. So again, the whole goal of the book was to help kids. And if I could do it through having a book, so the book runs through Amazon, but the best way to get it is through my website, which is bkstrength.com. But we're taking a chunk of the proceeds, and we have a class on your mark, coaching and training, which was where I am right now in the gym, called Game Changers, which is a total athlete, young athlete, high school athlete, junior high athlete training program, where we've got kids that are soccer players, volleyball players, some lacrosse players, and field hockey players, all trained together. So our goal with the class is to build athletic fundamentals by borrowing from various sports, whether it be hand-eye coordination or foot-eye coordination or easy movement mechanics. So simple concepts through all sports. And we also wanted to build some camaraderie where we have different athletes from different sports trained together and pushing each other to do well, which is what our definition of Nike training is all about, is having all these athletes of various sports in the same room, creating a high-level training program. So portions of the proceeds of the book go to a Game Changers scholarship fund, where we will allow kids that maybe couldn't train the opportunity to get high-level training, as well as elevate the room and compete in a friendly way and make people better by the just sort of the hustle that goes on in here with the various athletes in the various sports. It's been cool to see, maybe the soccer girl doesn't have the hand-eye coordination that the basketball player has, but she kicks his ass in some of these sprints, right? So now the basketball player's like, oh man, I don't like losing. I'm going to be faster. And the soccer player's like, oh, I don't like dropping balls. I'm going to be more focused on my hands. So the whole goal of the program was to create an athletic training experience to bring kids of various sports together.
Perfect. So we're going to send that little email out with everyone as well. But thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you for giving us all that information. And I appreciate you, and I know the guys will appreciate it as well. So thank you very much.
Happy to be here. Thank you, everybody, for having me be a part of your evening. Appreciate it.